There's a room inside your mind where you've been living for years. You don't remember entering it, but you've forgotten what the sky looks like. You wake up, and before your eyes fully open, your mind is already moving, already rehearsing conversations that haven't happened, already solving problems that don't exist yet, already defending yourself against accusations no one has made. The body is here, but you are somewhere else entirely. This is the quiet tragedy of overthinking. Not that we think, but that we cannot stop. Not that we plan, but that we live inside our plans, mistaking the map for the territory, the menu for the meal. Imagine a bird born inside a cage. It learns the dimensions of its bars, the distance between the floor and the ceiling. It knows every angle, every shadow, and then one day the door opens, but the bird doesn't fly. It stays because the cage is all it knows. The cage feels like safety. The cage feels like home. Your thoughts have become that cage. You think you're solving things when you replay that conversation from 3 weeks ago. You think you're preparing when you rehearse tomorrow's anxiety today. You think you're protecting yourself when you build walls out of what-ifs and shoulds and maybes. But here's what's actually happening. You're trading your life for a story about your life. You're living inside your head while the world moves around you, untouched, unseen. There's a difference between thinking and being trapped in thought. One is a tool, the other is a prison. Most people don't realize they're imprisoned because the walls are invisible. They're made of worry, rumination, mental rehearsal, endless analysis. They're made of the belief that if you just think about it long enough, hard enough, perfectly enough, you'll finally be free. But that's the paradox. The more you think your way toward freedom, the tighter the cage becomes. Let me tell you something the Sufis understood centuries ago. The mind is a beautiful servant and a terrible master. When you use it, it serves you. When it uses you, you become its prisoner. And overthinking is the moment the servant becomes the master. You see it everywhere once you know what to look for. The person who can't enjoy a meal because they're already thinking about the next one. The one who can't rest because their mind is cataloguing all the things they didn't do today. The one who stands in front of a sunset and thinks about whether they're appreciating it correctly, whether they should take a photo, whether other people are watching them watch it. The moment is lost because the thinking about the moment has replaced the moment itself. This is not intelligence, this is not awareness, this is the mind eating itself. And the cruelest part, you believe you have no choice. You believe this is just who you are, the thinker, the planner, the careful one. You've built an identity around your overthinking, and now you defend it like it's precious, like it's protecting you. But ask yourself, what has it actually protected you from? Not pain. You've thought yourself into pain 1,000 times over things that never happened. Not failure. You've failed in your mind more than you ever could in reality. Not loneliness. Your overthinking has kept you lonely, trapped inside your own skull, unable to be present with another human being. The truth is simpler and more devastating than you want to admit. Your overthinking has protected you from nothing. It has only stolen from you time, presence, peace, connection, life itself. Rumi once said, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." But the overthinker hears this and immediately starts calculating. How big is the ocean? What does that mean about my responsibilities? Am I doing enough? Am I worthy of being called an ocean? And in that moment, the poetry dies. The truth dissolves. All that's left is the noise. This is what overthinking does. It takes something alive and turns it into a problem to be solved. It takes something beautiful and asks, yes, but what does it mean? It takes something simple and makes it complicated. It takes freedom and turns it into a puzzle with no solution. And you keep solving and solving and solving until one day you look up and realize you've spent your entire life preparing to live, planning to live, thinking about living, but never actually living. The poet Mary Oliver asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" And the overthinker answers, "Let me think about it." But by the time they finish thinking, the life has already passed. Here's what no one tells you. Your freedom doesn't live on the other side of perfect thinking. Your freedom lives on the other side of thinking altogether, not in stupidity, not in carelessness, but in the space between thoughts, in the gap where you are not figuring out, analyzing, planning, rehearsing, but simply being. The Zen masters call it no mind, not the absence of mind, but the presence of something deeper, something that was there before your first thought, something that will be there after your last. Your true nature doesn't overthink, it doesn't second guess, it doesn't rehearse, it simply responds, flows, moves, like water finding its way down a mountain, not by planning the route, but by being water. You were born knowing this. Watch a child. They don't overthink laughter. They don't analyze play. They don't rehearse joy. They are simply, fully, completely alive in each moment. Somewhere along the way, you learned to distrust that. You learned that thinking harder meant being safer, that analyzing more meant being smarter, that planning everything meant controlling something. But all you've controlled is your own capacity for aliveness. And that is the real cost. Not the opportunities you missed, not the mistakes you avoided, but the moment by moment experience of being here, now, in this body, on this earth, alive. That's what overthinking has stolen from you. Your freedom. Let's look at how this cage actually works, because until you see the mechanism, you can't escape it. Overthinking operates on a simple but devastating assumption that reality is a problem, and your job is to think your way to the solution. So you wake up, and immediately your mind presents you with today's problems, what you have to do, what might go wrong, what you should have done yesterday, what they might think, what you need to prove, what you need to avoid, and you believe this is necessary. You believe this is how responsible people operate. You believe that if you stop thinking about these things, everything will fall apart. But here's what's actually happening. Your mind is creating the very problems it claims to be solving. That conversation you're rehearsing, it probably won't happen the way you're imagining. But by the time you actually have it, you'll be so exhausted from the mental rehearsal that you won't be present for the real thing. That worst case scenario you're preparing for, it probably won't happen, but you'll suffer through it dozens of times in your imagination, and each time your body responds as if it's real. Stress hormones, tension, anxiety, your body can't tell the difference between an imagined threat and a real one. This is the trap. You think you're preparing, but you're just practicing suffering. The Buddha said that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. What he meant was this: life will bring difficulties, but when you add layers of thought onto those difficulties, when you replay them, rehearse them, amplify them, project them into the future, that's when pain becomes suffering. The rain falls, that's pain, but then you think, why does it always rain when I have plans? Nothing ever works out for me. This is typical. I should have known. That's suffering, and it's entirely self-created. Overthinking is the art of self-created suffering. You take a single moment, something that happened, something someone said, something you did, and you spin it into a narrative. You add context, you add meaning, you add interpretations. You create a story about what it means about you, about them, about your future, about your worth, and then you believe the story. You defend the story. You suffer over the story. But the story was never real. It was just thoughts stacked on top of thoughts, creating the illusion of solidity. Alan Watts talked about this as the illusion of the separate self. You believe you are the thinker, standing apart from life, observing it, analyzing it, trying to control it. But that separation is itself a thought. The moment you stop thinking, the separation disappears. There's just life happening. No observer, no observed, just being. But the overthinker can't stop thinking long enough to discover this, because the moment they stop, fear arises. The fear that without constant mental vigilance, something terrible will happen, that they'll be unprepared, that they'll make a mistake, that they'll be exposed. So they keep thinking, they keep analyzing, they keep trying to figure it all out, and the cage gets smaller. Here's how you know you're caught. You can't enjoy good things when they happen because you're already thinking about when they'll end. You can't rest because your mind is already listing what you haven't done. You can't connect with people because you're monitoring your performance in real time, editing your words, calculating their reactions. You're everywhere except where you actually are. The Sufis have a teaching: die before you die. It sounds dramatic, but it's pointing to something simple. Die to the false self. Die to the constructed identity that depends on constant thought to maintain itself. Die to the story you're telling about who you are and what everything means. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You realize you're still here, still alive, still breathing, but lighter, freer, more present, because the weight you were carrying wasn't reality, it was just thought. Every spiritual tradition points to this in different ways. The Christians call it surrender. The Buddhists call it letting go. The Taoists call it Wu-Wei effortless action. They're all pointing to the same truth. Freedom lives in the absence of mental grasping. But we resist this because we've been taught that more thought equals more control, that the solution to every problem is to think harder, plan better, analyze deeper. And this might work for solving technical problems, for building bridges or writing code, but it destroys your ability to be alive, because life isn't a problem to be solved, it's an experience to be lived. The overthinker treats their life like a chess game, always thinking 3 moves ahead, always calculating outcomes, always trying to win. But life isn't chess. There's no opponent, there's no winning. There's only this moment, and then the next one, and then the next. And each moment is asking you the same question: are you here? Not, are you thinking about being here? Not, are you planning to be here? But, are you actually fully, completely here? Most people haven't been fully here in years. They've been thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or next month or 10 years from now. They've been in their heads, in their stories, in their interpretations. And meanwhile, life has been happening. The sunrise they didn't see because they were checking their phone. The conversation they didn't hear because they were rehearsing their next point. The love they didn't feel because they were analyzing whether it was safe. This is the cost that no one calculates. Not the big dramatic costs, but the quiet, constant cost of being absent from your own life. Krishnamurti said, "The ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence." But the overthinker can't observe without evaluating, can't see without judging, can't experience without interpreting. Everything must be processed, analyzed, understood, filed away. And in that processing, the living moment dies. You wanted to protect yourself. You wanted to be smart, prepared, safe. But what you actually did was build a wall between yourself and life itself. The cage is made of thoughts, and the key is simpler than you think. So how do you escape? Here's the frustrating truth. You can't think your way out of overthinking. That's like trying to use fire to put out fire. The tool that created the problem can't solve it. Instead, you need to do something your mind will resist with everything it has. You need to stop. Not forever, not permanently, just for one breath, just for one moment, just long enough to notice that beneath the noise there's silence. And in that silence you're still here, still alive, still okay. This is the beginning. The Zen tradition has a practice called zazen, just sitting. No goals, no mantras, no trying to achieve anything, just sitting with whatever arises. Thoughts come, fine, let them come. Thoughts go, fine, let them go. You don't engage, you don't analyze, you just watch. And in the watching, something shifts. You realize thoughts are not you, they're events happening in awareness, like clouds passing through the sky. The sky doesn't chase the clouds, doesn't try to arrange them, doesn't worry about whether they're the right clouds. The sky just lets them pass. You are the sky, not the clouds. But you've spent so long identifying with the clouds, with the thoughts, the stories, the mental content that you've forgotten about the sky. You've forgotten about the vast, open, aware space in which all thoughts arise and dissolve. This is not a metaphor. This is something you can directly experience right now. Notice the thought you're having right now, whatever it is. Where is it? Not conceptually, where is it actually happening? In what space? In what awareness? If you look closely, you'll notice the thought appears in the same place you're looking from, in awareness itself. And awareness doesn't overthink. Awareness doesn't worry. Awareness just is. You've always been this awareness. You've just been distracted by the content appearing in it. The Sufis tell a story about a man who spent his whole life searching for treasure. He traveled the world, climbed mountains, crossed deserts, and then one day, exhausted, he returned home and discovered the treasure was buried beneath his own doorstep. You are that man. You've been searching for peace, freedom, clarity somewhere else, in some future moment when you've figured everything out, when you've thought through all the problems, when you've made all the right decisions. But the treasure is here. It's always been here. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy looking. This is the pathless path, not a technique, not a method, not a 10-step program, just the simple recognition that freedom is already present. You're just covering it over with layers of thought. So the practice isn't to add something, it's to subtract, to let go, to stop doing, to stop trying, to stop controlling. Lao Tzu said, to attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day. Overthinking is the endless addition. More analysis, more planning, more figuring out. But wisdom is subtraction, letting go of what isn't necessary, returning to what's simple, what's direct, what's true. And what's true is this. Right now, in this moment, before your next thought arises, you are free. Not free in some philosophical sense, actually free. Not bound, not trapped, not imprisoned by anything except the belief that you're imprisoned. The cage has no walls. It never did. There was only ever the thought of walls, and you believed it so deeply that you stopped testing them. But try it now. Test the walls. Where is this prison you're in? Show me the bars. Point to them, not conceptually, actually point to them. You can't, because they're made of thought, and thought has no substance. It arises, it dissolves, like fog in sunlight. This doesn't mean thought is bad. This doesn't mean you should never think. Think when thinking is useful. Plan when planning is necessary. Analyze when analysis serves you. But don't mistake the tool for your identity. Don't live in the tool. Don't become the tool. The hammer doesn't think it's a hammer all day long. It rests, it waits. It's picked up when needed and set down when not. Your mind is the same. Use it, then set it down. But you've forgotten how to set it down, so you carry it everywhere, even to bed, especially to bed. You take it into moments that don't require it, moments that would be better served by simply being present. A kiss, a sunset, a conversation, a meal. These don't need to be thought about, they need to be experienced. And experience only happens now, not in your thoughts about now, but in the actual, direct, unmediated encounter with now. The poet Rilke wrote, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." But the overthinker can't let things happen. They need to control, predict, manage, understand. They need to know how it will end before it begins. They need to prepare for every outcome before any outcome arrives. And in that need, they miss the thing itself. So here's the practice, if we can call it that. When you notice you're overthinking, don't try to stop overthinking. Just notice. Just see it. Just watch the mind doing what the mind does. And in that watching, you're already free, because the one who is watching the thoughts is not the thoughts. The awareness that sees the overthinking is not caught in the overthinking. You can't control whether thoughts arise, but you can stop believing them, stop following them, stop treating them like reality. They're just weather, mental weather, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, but always changing, always passing. You are not the weather, you are the sky. Remember that. When the mind says, "But what if?" you're the sky. When the mind says, "You should have," you're the sky. When the mind says, "They probably think," you're the sky, vast, open, unmoved by what passes through. This is your freedom, not somewhere else, not later, now. So what does life look like on the other side of overthinking? Not perfect, not problem-free, not without challenges or difficulties or moments of confusion, but lighter, simpler, more direct. You start to notice the difference between a real problem and a thought about a problem. A real problem requires action. A thought about a problem just requires recognition that it's a thought. Someone criticizes you, that's real. It happened. But then your mind starts, "They hate me. Everyone probably thinks this. I'm terrible at everything. I should just quote, stop. That's not real. That's story. That's the mind doing what it does, spinning one event into a narrative about your entire existence. See it, recognize it, let it pass. And what's left? Just the original event. Someone criticized you. Maybe they had a point. Maybe they didn't. Maybe you adjust. Maybe you don't. But it's just one thing, not a catastrophe, not a judgment on your worth, just information, just life happening. This is what freedom actually feels like. Not the absence of thoughts, but the absence of being controlled by thoughts. Not the absence of emotions, but the ability to feel them without being drowned by them. You begin to move through life more like water and less like ice. Water responds to what's in front of it. It doesn't rehearse flowing. It doesn't worry about the shape of the riverbed. It just flows. Ice is rigid, brittle. It holds its shape until it breaks. This is the overthinker, holding, controlling, maintaining, until finally, inevitably, they crack under the pressure of trying to hold everything together. But you don't have to be ice. You were water all along. You just forgot. The practical shifts are small but profound. You're in a conversation, and instead of monitoring your performance, calculating their reactions, rehearsing your next point, you're just listening, actually listening. And words come. They always do. You didn't need to prepare them. You're facing a decision, and instead of analyzing it to death, listing pros and cons, imagining every outcome, you check in with your body. You notice what feels right, what feels true, and you move, not recklessly, not carelessly, but with trust in your own direct knowing. You make a mistake, and instead of spiraling into shame, replaying it endlessly, imagining what everyone thinks, you simply acknowledge it. You learn from it if there's something to learn. You apologize if an apology is needed. And then you let it go because it's done. It's over. The only place it still exists is in your thoughts, and you're no longer interested in living there. This is the art of living without the cage. Not perfectly, not always, but increasingly, progressively, more and more, you remember to come back, to be here, to stop abandoning yourself to the endless theater of thought. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But this isn't about control in the way the overthinker thinks about control. It's about recognizing what's actually within your power. You can't control what thoughts arise. You can't control what others think. You can't control outcomes. But you can control where you place your attention. You can control whether you believe the story your mind is telling. You can control whether you remain present or disappear into thought. That's your power. That's your freedom. And it's enough, more than enough, because when you're present, you're resourceful, creative, responsive. You see what's actually needed instead of what your anxiety tells you is needed. You respond to reality instead of to your stories about reality. And life gets easier, not because life changes, but because you stop adding layers of resistance onto life. Things happen, you respond. Things change, you adapt. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's beautiful, often it's both at once. But you're there for it, actually there, not thinking about being there, not wishing it were different, not preparing for the next moment while this one passes by. Just here, just alive, just breathing. Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk, wrote, "Happiness is not a matter of intensity, but of balance, order, rhythm, and harmony." The overthinker has lost all of these. Everything is intense, intensely worried, intensely prepared, intensely controlled. But there's no balance, no rhythm, no harmony, just the constant hum of mental machinery. But when you step back, when you let go, when you remember that you are not your thoughts' balance returns, not because you force it, but because it's your natural state. A tree doesn't overthink growing. A river doesn't overthink flowing. A bird doesn't overthink flying. They simply do what they are. And in that doing, there's a kind of effortless perfection, not moral perfection, not flawless execution, but alignment, harmony, being what they are. You are the same. When you stop trying to be something other than what you are, when you stop trying to think your way into worthiness, safety, or control, you discover you were always enough, always whole, always free. The overthinking was just the forgetting. and now you're remembering. So here's what I want you to hear. Your freedom is not on the other side of perfect thinking. It's on the other side of thinking you need perfect thinking. It's in the pause between thoughts, in the breath you take before reacting, in the moment you choose presence over preparation. The cage is made of thought, and thought is just fog. Walk through it. You were never trapped, you were just convinced you were. And now you know. The door was always open. You just had to stop thinking about whether you deserved to walk through it and walk.